Well, good morning, everybody. This is Randy Welsh, the Executive Director for the National Wilderness Stewardship Alliance, bringing you a special NWSA webinar. Today's focus is the NWSI, the National Wilderness Skills Institute, a recap and also a challenge. We want to talk today with a panel of folks that were involved with putting together the National Wilderness Skills Institute last May. Talk about how it went, what was learned, and then what they foresee for the future going forward of the National Wilderness Skills Institute as a way to train wilderness seasonal employees, partner groups that are doing work in wilderness, and all the different complexities that the National Wilderness Skills Institute introduces into the training arena for wilderness stewards. As part of that conversation, we may touch upon the National Wilderness Workshop, how it's different from the National Wilderness Skills Institute, how it might be the same in some respects in terms of audiences, but we will cover those topics as we go. With me today, we have Dusty Vaughn, the program assistant for the Wilderness Program out of Washington, D.C. And I'm going to go ahead and let you, Dusty, take it away and introduce your panel and lead off with the program with a short video clip.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Dusty Vaughn, National Wilderness and Wild and Scenic River Specialist for the USDA Forest Service based in Washington, D.C. And glad to have everyone here with us. And maybe we'll just go around and introduce ourselves, team. So let's see here. Looks like Dan Abbey. Will you go ahead next?
Sure. Thanks, Dusty. Good day, everybody. My name is Dan Abbey. I'm the Forest Service representative at the Arthur Carhart National Wilderness Training Center. And I'll pass it on to Jimmy.
Hey, I'm Jimmy Gaudry. I'm the Wilderness and Wild and Scenic Rivers Program Manager from the northern region of the Forest Service located in Missoula, Montana. I'll pass it to John Campbell next.
Guessing we're in intro since I just got on. Sorry for being a few minutes late. I'm John Campbell, Southern Region Wilderness and Wild and Scenic River Program Manager. And was there any other information that was requested during the intros? Nope. Okay.
No, that's
Thanks
good,
for having
John.
us.
And then over to Bill Hodge.
Good afternoon, everybody. Bill Hodge. I'm the Executive Director of the Bob Marshall Wilderness Foundation and coming to you from Hungry Horse, Montana today.
Great. And before the next one, I just got to know, Bill, did you see your shadow this morning when you woke up?
I did, and there will be 6 more weeks of winter.
Great. And then Nancy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nancy Taylor. I'm the Wilderness and Wild and Scenic Rivers Program Manager for the Pacific Northwest region, and I'm based in Western Oregon. Thanks for coming today, everyone.
Great. I think that's everyone. So now what we'll do is just share a quick video clip that we used to open up the NWSI last year and just sort of check in to see how did we do. So let me click a few buttons here to share my screen. Just give me a second here. Make sure I share my sound. And here it comes.
One of the skills needed to work in wilderness and wild and scenic rivers is the ability to adapt. Changing conditions is just a part of our world. Last year, our collective workforce was faced with a global pandemic that changed our environment. We needed to adapt.
As field-going staff are preparing to take on the challenges of our time, we are still facing the need to adapt. That's why we've pulled together the first ever National Wilderness Skills Institute, providing a training platform for wilderness rangers, river rangers, program managers, and trail crew members.
Since January, the core team has been working to pull together this event, one that, while no substitute for the regional ranger academies or regional skills institutes, we hope will be a bridge to when we can gather together again in person.
With the national reach of this training, we have been able to gather some of the best thinkers and practitioners in our field. We have cut across disciplines and will present the conceptual, the practical, and the highly technical skills over the week ahead.
The response to this training opportunity has been overwhelming, with over 800 of you signed up to participate. Wow, that is quite the community of practice. This week, you will have the ability to bounce between tracks that include traditional skills, visitor use management, wild and scenic rivers, Wilderness 1, and Wilderness 2.
The cadre of instructors spans academia, agency leadership, and the seasoned veterans of our work. The lessons will address the need for traditional skills, like use of the crosscut saw, and will tackle the issues of our day, like adapting to the rapidly expanding use of public lands, including designated wilderness.
You will share Zoom rooms with permanent and seasonal agency personnel, partner staff, and volunteers. Some of you will be right out of school, others of you will be approaching or even beyond retirement. One thing that we think will hold true this week is the phrase, "None of us is as smart as all of us." The collective knowledge in each one of these courses is what will make this week special, so please plan to be an active participant.
What we take from this week will be used in the field in the months ahead. The format of the week might be carried over to when we return to gathering in person for trainings like this. Your feedback will matter, and you will have a chance to share what worked and what did not.
Thank you so much for being a part of this community of practice, and a special thanks to those who stepped forward to lead the sessions ahead of us. Let's get on with our week. This week is about creating connections and about building our skill sets. Try to put aside the noise as best you can, settle into the agenda that works for you, and welcome to the first National Wilderness Skills Institute.
All right, I'm just pulling up my notes here.
Yeah,
So
very nice.
thanks. Yeah, so that's what we use to kick off the week and kind of set the tone. And for those that weren't able to attend, we had 5 tracks that spanned 5 days. Basically, we started off with a keynote, and we had over 70 different presentations throughout the week. And those were all recorded, and nearly all of them are available on YouTube on the Society for Wilderness Stewardship's page. And I'll throw the link into the chat here in a bit. But maybe I wanted to pass it around to the different core team members and sort of let them sort of provide their reflection on how it went to kind of get us going. So who wants to go first?
And while the folks are thinking about their comments, I would just like you to incorporate your thoughts about the concept of doing this National Wilderness Skills Institute virtually versus in person. Think about the instructors, the content, the outcomes that you expected as part of your comments. Would appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe we'll start with Jimmy. Do you want to give us some background into like how the event was formed and that sort of concept?
Yeah, I thought we were going to go with whoever could hit the unmute button first, but happy to do that. So we've had this discussion before, but I'll share again. You know, across the country and different regions of the Forest Service, we typically have many regionally led trainings that pull together our wilderness and trails, and sometimes our wild and scenic rivers workforce to either brush up on skills that they haven't used through the winter, or to train new staff and partners in getting ready for a field season, and typically to grow a community of practice. And this has gone on for many years, and it's had different flavors and varieties depending on what part of the country you're in. There's been discussion from time to time on trying to develop something that maybe was a little bit more standardized. It's historically just kind of been up to a region to decide whether or not they were going to do something. And given the place we were at last year, with not being able to get together in person, a group of us came together in January 2021 and thought about what we could do virtually that might do 2 things. One, combine that idea of, boy, can we do something that applies across all regions and hopefully applies for our partners and our volunteers, but also is appealing to other agencies as well. And it started with a brainstorm on what could we do. And I know from my perspective, where we started out and where we ended up were two different concepts. I did not have a vision for us doing what we did, but it came together well, and we had a great team of folks to do that. And so yeah, that's kind of how we landed on doing what we did. And so I would love to hear from some of the other members of the planning team as to kind of where they thought things were going, and your thoughts on the success.
Yeah, I can jump in. The thing that I thought about that carried through for me through the whole planning effort and then into the Skills Institute was the fact that certainly our worlds have all been turned upside down, and we're in a different place now thinking about virtual training, which, you know, many of us never really even thought about doing something like this virtually in the past. But even though we weren't doing virtual events like this so much, there's always been people who maybe don't have a wilderness or wild and scenic river community already established where they are, or they can't travel to get to a regional training or even the National Wilderness Workshop, you know, even though they're different events, but just don't have that opportunity to get to connect with other people. So the thing I thought about a lot was that whole idea of building that community of practice and connection, and, you know, in all aspects of that, you know, the friendships that develop when you get to know people, but also just that community to reach out to when you have questions and you're, you know, trying to find out if anyone else has examples of, hey, we're dealing with this here too. So that to me has been just such an important piece of this. And, you know, in this region, here in the Pacific Northwest, you know, we have not been able to rebuild our regional training yet. We hope to at some point. But I think even when we do, this National Wilderness Skills Institute is still, I hope, going to be a really important piece of and a complementary piece to what we do here in this region. So I think that that long-term community is just such an important part of this to me. And I have a vision of us, you know, continuing that in some form for years to come, hopefully.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. And I'll sprinkle in some of the statistics that we have from the event throughout this too. So I think when we were originally planning it, I think we kind of told ourselves if like 50 people or if 100 people show up, it'll be hugely successful, you know, and that we feel like we've, you know, the work that we're putting into it will have benefited some great folks. But we were really blown away when at the end we had nearly 900 people register to attend the event. We even had folks from Austria, Canada, Ecuador, and the Kingdom of Jordan not only register but participate in the week, and that was really surprising. It was still about 60% Forest Service folks. We had 38% were partner organizations, and then the other smaller percentages were like the Bureau of Land Management and National Park Service. So we had almost 40% as the partners. So if Bill, could you speak to the partnership side of this effort?
Sure. I mean, I think the big challenge to last year was partners have different calendars. Work starts at different times of the year, depending on field conditions. And we just had to sort of pick a week and go with that week and hope that it would work for as many as possible. And that those who maybe had a later start date for their seasonal employees could take advantage of the recordings. And those who needed to start earlier were obviously going to sort of be on their own. It is an important part of the partner world to make sure that we have a trained and ready for the field staff, and the National Wilderness Skills Institute as a substitute for the regional based trainings was a great way to make sure that some of that baseline could be provided in a group setting. We obviously were missing the esprit de corps that comes with being together in person at the regional skills institutes or ranger academies, but it was as your numbers indicated, it was an important component for training for the partner community, because there were still plenty of partner organizations who were able to send staff and take advantage of the training. I think it was also vitally important the partners were part of putting on the event. You know, besides myself, there were lots of other partners at the table, the Society for Wilderness Stewardship and the Selway Bitterroot Free Church Foundation, River Management Society, Southern Appalachian Wilderness Stewards, because we could give voice to the sort of trainings that our staffs needed as they got ready for field seasons in a variety of landscapes across the country. So I think it's important. It is clearly not something I think is a substitute for place-based training, but something can augment those training opportunities for sure.
Were there any challenges in the setting up the content for virtual versus in person, especially as it relates to the partners versus the agency folks? Did you have any challenges trying to decide how to mold content to fit one audience or the other, or was it pretty much the same for both audiences?
I think it was the same for both audiences. I think just sort of speaking specifically from my perspective on the partner side, it was just hard to get the offerings to line up exactly with what the individual organizations need. And I think we saw a lot of organizations who could partake in a few sessions, but not very many, just because there were so many other things that they needed to provide their staff. And I really am speaking specifically from a Bob Marshall Wilderness Foundation perspective, is we were able to get our staff to sit in on about 3 or 4 sessions, but we had so many other things going on our very specific and local training that it was kind of hard to get those things to line up. I think another challenge, while I'm sort of speaking in the negative right now, was a lot of the feedback I heard from partner organizations and partner employees was everybody was pretty Zoom fatigued by the time we got to May of last year. And the thought of going through a training involved staring at a computer screen, people just sort of wanted to buck that idea. And I think that sort of made it challenging. I think it's going to make it even probably more challenging in 2022, is if we were tired of Zoom and Teams meetings in 21, just imagine what it's like in 22.
Yeah, go ahead, Jimmy.
Hey, I do. First, we've discussed some of this as a group quite a bit, and I don't think you're going to get the exact same opinion from all of us on the team. When we've done these in person, we bring people out on the trail and we teach them how to, install a drain dip or do rock work, or we teach them how to make public contacts when they're working in the wilderness ranger role. There are certain just skills that we did our best to stretch, I think, the virtual platform to the extent we could. But it's really hard to fit some of those just hands-on, you need to do it skills into this type of learning environment. And the cool thing is, I think we'll leave when all this is done with an idea of how to blend some of that virtual opportunity with those hands-on needs. But I personally think, and I think most people agree with me, like you get to a point where it's like, you got to get together and run a crosscut saw. You're not going to learn all the skills virtually. And so eventually we need to be able to get back to that point.
Thanks, Jimmy. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention. And I think that group pretty quickly realized that the option of doing nothing wasn't an option, that even if we can't get together, we need to be able to help bring the community of practice together and at least give them face time with each other. And I think the way that the training was outlined, with the coffee hours in the morning and a real mix of opportunities for people to interact with each other, not just necessarily sit and listen to someone present information, was a real draw for a lot of people. The other thing, I think that there was a synergy, I think, between the federal agencies and the partners too, because there was recognition with the planning team right off the bat when it came to, okay, whose platform or whose technology are we going to run this off of? And the partners were much more nimble and able to say and step up and say, yeah, we can provide the platform if you guys help us. So in a lot of ways, we were this hybrid organization that took the advantages of both what partners could bring to the table and some of the experience and expertise that the agencies brought to the table. And then the other real benefit too was we were able to draw some speakers. I know Bill's effort to bring Dr. Drew Lanham as the keynote was a huge plus. I think it added tremendously, and it was a great way to kick off the week. But then you looked at some of the academics that were able to present some of the research findings and how that rolls over into the practical world. And then also just with the traditional skills track, using pool noodles as logs to demonstrate the techniques associated with crosscut, and then also the pack sessions with pack stock that were presented. So, realizing there were 5 different tracks, there was so much content that I think everybody could find something that was applicable to them. I do think that, I think Jimmy hit the nail on the head that, and so did Nancy, as far as, we learned a lot. One of the things we learned is that the value of face-to-face camaraderie and opportunities to learn face-to-face can't be replaced in the virtual world, but there's some things that the virtual world can bring to the table that supplement and actually enhance it. So I was just really impressed with how everything sort of came together, because it was a huge undertaking, and everybody chipped in and made it happen. And it was I think added a lot of value to everybody's plate, and even moving forward, I think we're taking some of those lessons with us.
Go ahead, Randy.
Okay, well, thank you guys. That's very helpful. From the standpoint of the instructors and the instruction that was done, what sort of were the challenge or the benefits of the Zoom virtual format relative to your instructors and instructors and the instruction that you gave? What were some of the challenges to make sure that your content really came across?
I can go first with that. For the courses I taught, some of the challenges were, the classic Zoom experience where if everyone has the camera turned off, it's hard to know the level of engagement and interest. And if folks are kind of tracking along, it's hard to read the room, right, when that's going on. And yeah, we were limited in hanging out before and after kind of class and in person, things like that. But I think there were some advantages in that, for me, at least, it helped me get my presentation done sooner. And now we also have it recorded. And so a lot of these recorded sessions are still relevant today. And so we're definitely not planning on redoing a lot of the courses, because a lot of the material is still the same. And from those courses, we can continue to develop them and maybe even build a curriculum off them and everything. But I know some of the other folks in this on this core team all had some different challenges than I experienced as well when it comes to Zoom. I think I see your hand up, Dan.
Sorry, that was a legacy hand. I'll take it out. Dusty hit it, that we actively encouraged all the presenters to make sure that they had some interactive content during their presentation, whether that was a poll or just asking people to comment in the chat. So we tried to mitigate some of that sort of people zoning out, not being involved by actively engaging participants, and it worked to an extent, but by the end of a week, it was a long haul. I think a lot of us felt pretty exhausted by the end of the week just because of the screen time we had during the week.
Yeah, go ahead, Jimmy.
Hey, it's worth noting the success in being virtual was that we were able to get support from a lot of different people across the country. And as much as the core team, like we get to now wave the flag of success right now, boy, a lot of people put work into this, and each of the presenters came forward with like, how can I do this different? And so I don't feel like we necessarily framed it all up for each presenter. They had an opportunity to experiment, and I think that was kind of the cool part, is we just saw a lot of people trying to do different things given what they had, and we had people presenting on topics that if I was to host something in my region, I would never have been able to get the caliber of presenters we had. Challenges, I'll go back to one of the sessions that I hosted was the authority, the resource technique, and doing public contacts. And so we tried to do like we typically do in person, where we had someone in a ranger role and someone in a visitor role, and we did it. But the challenge was you just lost some of that actual interaction as if you were in the field doing it. But it was a good stretch of the platform we were in, and I think we left thinking about different ways to create those scenarios, actually even in a virtual platform.
Go ahead, John, if you're still there. You may have had to step away. Yeah, I think you had to step away. So yeah, speaking of like the ability to bring in people that wouldn't necessarily have been able to travel to our individual region ones, as we saw in the chat there. Yeah, I think we had over 100 presenters able to come and present on various topics or part of panel discussions. And so that was really a unique thing as well. Let's see here, what else? I'm just sort of waiting for John to step back in the room here.
So, well, so Dusty, having 5 different tracks and letting people pick and choose what they wanted to do, how did that work out? What kind of feedback did you get from participants then on their ability to go to the sessions that were of most value to them versus and their angst about not being able to visit some of the sessions that they really were interested in?
Yeah, so not all, I would say a good majority of them didn't just focus on one track and only go to the courses in that track, based on what we saw with registration versus some of the feedback forms. Our most popular track was the traditional skills, and it looks like about 35% of the folks that responded to our survey said that that's the track that they followed. 27% said they didn't really follow a specific track. And then about 19% were on the visitor use, and then the rest were kind of spread out between Wilderness 1, Wilderness 2, and Wild and Scenic Rivers. And yeah, there was some angst with some of them being double stacked. We did our best, but our commitment was to record everything so that folks could go back and watch those ones that were missed. Yeah, and then so yeah, speaking of the videos, we've posted those up on YouTube, and we've had 2,400 views so far. That's about 485 hours of watching time that we've been able to continue to contribute past the Skills Institute itself. Our most popular video with 173 views is the Exploring Native Land Acknowledgements video. And then the next one would be the examination of the physics, nuances, and mechanics of traditional skills. And then Bill's Crosscut Saws 1 class is the next one. And then Trail Maintenance Basics for Field Staff. So those were our top 4 that have been viewed on YouTube. So, but Bill, you're trending. I don't know if anyone's made a meme out of you yet with your pool noodle log, but if they haven't, maybe I'll make one for you.
What's funny is having to pivot to teaching Crosscuts all online has actually led to tools that can apply in real life trainings, and actually using the pool noodle as an example for showing binds is a tool I just used last week in an in-person Crosscut Saw training. So it's actually been some carryover for sure.
Awesome. Just checking with John Campbell real quick. he had someone coming into his house working on some stuff that came a little bit later. So we'll bump over to Pete. Hey, Pete.
Hey, everybody. Not a core team member, and don't know if we're still limiting this discussion to core team members.
If you've got a question, go ahead, Pete.
Well, more of a comment to your question, Randy. I may be the oddball that was not suffering from Zoom fatigue in May of last year, and was pretty stoked and enjoyed the entire experience. One of the things I reflected on right away was that I had difficulty deciding between different tracks, between different sessions. But unlike some of the in-person conferences I've been to in the past, where my employer has paid for me to be there and was paying for me to stay in a hotel and eat meals, and me feeling like I'm here, I better go to something every minute that something is offered. But God, there's nothing this afternoon that interests me. That did not happen at all to me during the NWSI. In fact, if anything, I would have the opposite complaint that, man, I want to be in that session of traditional skills and kind of live with the California horse packers. But at the same time, I want to be in Kai Allen's session of resource advising in wild and scenic rivers. And at the same time, I want to be a part of another track. So I guess my experience, number one, I think it was absolutely amazing that a brainstorm session in January led to a amazingly successful institute 5 months later. Like, when I first heard about it, it's like, wow, number one, way too ambitious. Number two, y'all started way too late, like start now for 18 months out. But absolutely amazing that y'all pulled it off. And I think it was an amazing track. And, even us technologically challenged old guys got something out of it. End of report.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah. I would say that we kind of felt the same way January or this time last year. Like, are we going to do this? It sounds like a lot of work. It seems a bit ambitious. But yeah, things came together. Partners came together. Folks like the National Wilderness Stewardship Alliance made their Zoom rooms available. It was just sort of a great coming together of the wilderness community to kind of serve this need to get a good training into the hands of our new seasonals or experienced seasonals that are coming on board. As well as our long-term career folks as well. I learned quite a bit in it, and I had a great time doing it as well. And so, yeah, with that in mind, we started thinking and meeting together after the National Wilderness Skills Institute ended. We have actually been meeting together as a core team once a month to kind of still process, what happened, and then start also thinking about, okay, do we want to do this again? Do we really want to do this again? Are you sure you want to do this again? And I think we settled on yes after a long time. Our ultimate hope was that we'd be able to return to in-person trainings, but it looks like this is going to be another round of virtual, except for maybe the southern region might be able to do something in person, but unfortunately John had to jump off the call. So yeah, we recognize that there's yet another need, and so what are we going to do this year? And
Hey,
so
Dusty,
yeah,
before we talk about what's
Yeah.
coming up, you mentioned that you guys have been meeting over the last 6 months or so. So I'm curious about the evaluation that you guys have gone through. So what was the general gist of your evaluation of the success, of the outcomes of the training? What kind of anecdotes can you share about how people were able to apply the lessons learned into the actual field setting, and the success that you had through the training? Do you guys have some examples or any formal evaluation that was performed?
Yes, we have some statistics. While I pull those up, the other core team members want to respond.
So I can just share anecdotal feedback. I mean, we know, and I think Nancy was hitting on this some earlier, that there are some parts of the country where staff have never had access to a training like this before. And so by having this virtual provided a new opportunity that they hadn't been able to tap into. I also know that we have new partnerships or new staff and partner organizations in several of our partnerships in Region 1. And they leaned pretty heavily on some of the content, either in person or in recorded version, to do their staff training, because they maybe hadn't done staff trainings before. And so this was a great resource for them to pull from to do that. And so for me, those are a couple of just examples of things that honestly hadn't been for us pushing this virtual opportunity, then those folks who let us know that would still be in a place where they maybe hadn't had access to training like this. So anyway, couple of stories that I heard.
Yeah, and then diving deeper into some of the evaluation that we did. So we asked everyone to complete like an overall course evaluation, or event evaluation, I should say. And then we also had evaluations for each individual course. And we did provide those results of the individual courses to the instructors, so they can kind of see that specific feedback they got, as well as with any sort of feedback that were provided to the instructors. And, you know, just looking through our results, like 95% of all of our courses were within the 4 to 5 out of 5 range as far as rating for content and how they commanded the expertise of the subject matter, yeah, the instructor selection. And so we had really strong feedback on our courses for sure. I think I saw Nancy's hand.
Yeah, thanks, Dusty. I was just going to quickly share a couple of anecdotes from here in Region 6 too, is that, you know, I think that there was, of course, quite a few people that couldn't attend because their own trainings were going on at the same time in person on their forests, which others have talked about. But I think the recordings were really helpful, and it gets to that complementary nature of what NWSI was and hopefully will continue to be, that there were some sessions that they used during their trainings last year and then continue to use, which was great. And then the other thing that came up and not really jumping ahead to 2022, but just something, it was sort of feedback on what we did last year, was that, you know, when we were thinking about whether we were going to be able to pull something off here in the region, which we're not going to be able to this year, people, when we were kind of addressing the idea of, well, we just don't really have the capacity to be on a planning team and to really pull this off. But if there is going to be another NWSI, that's okay, because we'd really like to have that as a resource. And again, whether they are going to be able to attend in person or they may use the recordings again, I think people see it as a something that was really useful to them and was able to really add to what they were already doing. So some pretty neat feedback there.
Yeah, so maybe building off of that, do we want to transition to what we're planning on doing this next round, Randy?
Yeah, please. So yeah, a successful first version of NWSI. So what does the future bode?
Right. So yeah, this first one again was 5 days of courses, multiple tracks, 70 courses, 5 tracks, pretty large scale. And, you know, we definitely planned on doing it at least once. We weren't sure if we were going to continue doing it. We never really made the commitment that we're going to do it annually. It was going to be something that we review. I think we learned that there was a lot of good things that could happen from doing something at a national level at this time of year in the spring when folks are coming on board for the wilderness field work. And so that's when we started examining our options, right? Like we could do something as simple as one sort of national keynote that all of the regional ones that if they're in person, they can maybe tune in and do that one together, all the way up to, do we just repeat again and have like a full-blown week-long course? And maybe I'll let Nancy kind of talk about how we kind of landed where we are now, if that's okay.
Yeah, so man, everybody else, please jump in with pieces I missed here. But you know, we're looking ahead to having 3 days, and I think we're looking at 4 tracks now. And yeah, I think what we're thinking about is, and I have a feeling it's going to evolve a little differently for each track. We've done a really good, thorough look at what we did last year, and can we use some components of those recordings to build something new this year. So something, just as an example, that I've thought about, because I'm working on the Wilderness One track for 2022, is can we take pieces of the recordings and build more interactive, discussion and questions and that kind of thing into it. Then seeing, and I don't want to speak to the folks working on Wilderness 2, but they're creating some really great new components to the training. And another thing that's really exciting about this year is it looks like we're having a lot more involvement with the Department of Interior agencies. We've got several fish and wildlife folks. We have one BLM person right now, and hopefully that'll grow a little bit, whether it's more people on the planning team or it's, instructors. And so, I think, I wouldn't say it's a shift so much, but, the content of what we're doing, we're thinking about it in as we had hoped to do last year, but just kind of didn't get there just because of who was involved. But how do we present this content so it's really, really useful and interesting to people from all the different agencies, and relevant, I guess, is probably the best word for that. So yeah, I'll stop there for now. That's kind of where we are at the moment with our planning. We had a good call, I guess it was just last Friday, to really settle on those dates, which I guess we haven't put up anywhere. They're May 24th to 26th is what we settled on. So essentially the same week, but 3 days out of that week. And we haven't, and Dusty, I want to give credit where credit is due to our graphic artist. Dusty created a great save the date that we've been sharing out. So yeah, I'll stop there and let others jump in with pieces I might have missed there.
Are there any adjustments or changes that you've made to help improve or increase partner participation?
We haven't really made changes at this point, but we are really hoping to have partner involvement through the whole process. And I think a lot of that's going to depend on, and I'm not going to speak for you, Bill, but I know, like, unfortunately, your training's the same week. And then SWS has, Society for Wilderness Stewardship. They have a new program manager who's taken Jacob's place, Todd Lubsky, and he's involved with us. And so other partners, I don't know if there's any of the other regions that have been able to, and thanks, Pete. I was getting to that. River Management Society is a really important part of this. Essentially, Risa and Angie from RMS are taking on the lead for the wild and scenic rivers component of this. So that's a really, really important piece for us with partners. So, and I was just going to say really quick that I'm not sure in other regions whether folks, sort of who's available and who will be able to participate. And I think some of that will remain to be seen as we get into what's our content going to be and inviting people to join us with that content.
Yeah, I think as Nancy mentioned, I think one of our big focuses were to get more of the Department of Interior agencies involved this year. So good showing from Fish and Wildlife Service and working with BLM, Bureau of Land Management folks as well. And we'll have hopefully 1 or 2 National Park Service folks on board as well to help as instructors to kind of reach out to those field components as well. Because a lot of our work, a lot of our partners, work across our agency boundaries for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, so as Nancy mentioned, it's going to be 3 days. So it'll be like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, a little bit shorter, but a little bit more focused. And our plan, is to make sure that everyone is aware of what the courses were last year and they have access to the videos that were recorded last year. So that will still be linked within whatever new program we come up with, especially the information that's still relevant. And then we'll continue to build on that, diving deeper into some of the subjects, wilderness character monitoring. We're looking at, contacting or having fellows that have been working on the wilderness character narratives come and present, their experience, what they wish they knew, tools and tips that they can share for writing those with wilderness stewardship performance. That's a very Forest Service specific program, but again, we're looking to dive into that further with more topics. And yeah, the same thing with our agency partners. What are their agency specific programs that they use, and how can that information be shared out through this venue as well? And hey, Pete, see, I got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Dusty. I'm excited that it's going to happen again. A couple of comments. One is, I think going shorter to make it more palatable, maybe as a hybrid springboard, so that folks can weave it together with their in-person trainings. I think advertising it early, I'm sure that there were some folks that didn't commit very much last year because they maybe felt right up until the last minute that it might collapse in on itself. The tent might collapse. So having a track record and advertising early and getting it on folks' calendars and radars, I think is all good. I was absolutely amazed at the success of the traditional skills track last year, and have talked to some folks afterwards who maybe have been through multiple crosscut saw certification and recertification classes. And, sort of a consistent comment was this track obviously did not get us certified or recertified, but it enabled us to gain a lot of knowledge beyond what instructors in a crosscut certification course are able to spend time on. The deeper dive into axemanship, into history, into packing, into a lot of things beyond here's what you got to know for the test on a crosscut saw, and here's what you got to focus on and keep in your mind to demonstrate competence for the field evaluation. So yeah, thanks. End of report.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. I've also heard from some of our field folks too, that with this lack of in-person events, that they're having a hard time connecting and networking with one another. And so that's another thing that we're trying to figure out. How can we continue to create opportunities for folks to connect and network together? NWSI may not be the right venue, but maybe we can use it to kind of spark and invite folks to those types of gatherings remotely as they happen, hopefully on a monthly basis after the event. All right, go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, this has all been great. We're getting close to the top of the hour. I've got a couple more questions to kind of seed the conversation. First, curious on where you placed the videos. You said you put them on the SWS website, the links to YouTube. I'm curious why you didn't use Wilderness .net as the mechanism to advertise the NWSI?
That was mainly because Society for Wilderness Stewardship stepped up and said, hey, we'll host the website, and we have a YouTube channel. So it was mainly them volunteering to do that. And then our goal is to continue working with Wilderness Connect to make sure that those videos are referenced or linked to from there as well.
Okay, great. And so Dan, I was curious, what sort of synergy have you been able to create with the existing wilderness online courses and the NWSI content that you now have access to? And what might we see in the future as a crossover between those two?
That's a good question. So we did advertise the NWSI on Wilderness Connect last year, but again, there wasn't a request that they host the recordings because we had a place to host those as a team. As far as the synergy between the course content that Carhartt sort of created and has placed on Wilderness Connect, one of those is there is a cross-cut course on Wilderness Connect that walks people through that. We do tell people that's a resource as well. I don't know, Bill, if you had an opportunity to direct people to that during the NWSI or not, but it has a similar challenge in the fact it provides material, but it won't get you certified because you have to do your field component. So folks have to be aware of that when they take the course. Other things that we could explore that could be helpful is we have a number of toolboxes on Wilderness Connect, and some of the resources now that are being created by NWSI could definitely be linked to those toolboxes where appropriate. Like I'm thinking visitor use management and the visitor use management track. So we do have a visitor use management toolbox, and we could have links directly from that toolbox to those videos. So that is something we could definitely do. Carhartt originally last year, Carhartt was a little hesitant to jump on board with NWSI. I think now that the ship has sailed and NWSI proved how effective it could be, that there's much more support at Carhartt for being involved moving forward. So it will be interesting to see where that goes. But as far as specific examples of how we use the content from last year at Carhartt and on wilderness.net, I don't have any for you.
Okay. Well, thank you. I was kind of curious, since the online courses kind of cover a variety of management issues. In the past, we would send seasonal folks to go view those. Now we have this additional whole host of information with NWSI. So hopefully you guys will make some good use of both avenues to get information out. Well, we are getting close to the end. Why don't we, Dusty, if there's any closing comments you or any of the other panelists would like to make about NWSI and its success and future, let's go ahead and do that, and then I'll make a few final comments.
Sure. I just want to make sure that we acknowledge our thanks to all of the panelists and presenters and the folks that came and participated. Without you, this would have been just a bunch of talking heads on the internet. So we really thank you for the time that you took to prepare and to be present, and the energy and motivation that you poured out to us. So that's my sort of closing thoughts as a big thanks. And because of that, the National Wilderness Skills Institute was acknowledged by the Chief of the Forest Service. As a team, we received a Chief's Award for this. And so our sort of acceptance speech is just a one big thank you to all of those that helped pull this together. Anyone else on the core team?
Everybody's gotten quiet. Go ahead, finish up.
No, I'll just echo what Dusty said, and it was a fabulous experience. I think there was a synergy that developed pretty quickly, and the group sort of gelled around a common vision and sort of a mission to provide something that obviously there was a demonstrated need for. So the stars aligned correctly, and it was the right time and the right place and the right group of people. So my hat's off to everybody, and thank you for allowing me to be involved.
All right, any other core team members? Closing comments? All right, well, everybody's getting a little shy here at the end. So anyways, we just want to thank you, everybody on the core team, for coming and participating today, sharing your thoughts about the NWSI. Looking forward to the next version coming forward, and Dusty and team, if there's anything NWSA can do to help support your efforts to get training out to all our seasonal wilderness folks and partners, happy to do that. Happy to help publicize it with the partner groups as well to get them more engaged and involved. And if we find some ways that we can help do that, just let us know. Thanks everybody for coming today. I would mention that next week, Tuesday, we will have a regular NWSA webinar. We have a panel with Dr. Bob Thorvek and Chris Armitage from the Aldo Leopold Research Institute. They're going to host a session that started out talking about urban proximate wilderness issues, but it's sort of morphed into what does the future of wilderness management hold? And they're going to have a variety of topics to dive deep into with an audience. And so we hope that some of you will come back and participate us with that conversation next week. So with that, we'll go ahead and stop this particular session, and we'll see everybody next week.